Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. I'm Josie, and I am the chair of the Employment First Oversight Commission. I'm happy to be here. I wish I could be there in person or live, but I'm really happy to be able to share some of the updates from really the work that the Employment First Oversight Commission has done over this past year. As you all probably know, the Employment First Oversight Commission was first established by the Employment First Act that was finalized in 2018. We consist of members that are appointed by the governor, by legislators, those who represent different groups, such as the Client Assistance Program, the Rehab Council, and one of our major charges is to develop an annual report. That report is meant to provide information about progress made in Employment First efforts and really try to set some goals for the future work of our state. This report is quite comprehensive and really took the work of the entire commission to be able to complete this year. Something different that we did this year was we split the report up into different sections per department. We did this, one reason is recognizing that likely most departments are not going to read the entire report, although we would love for everyone to read it. We believe it's a good nighttime read. We know it's not necessarily something everyone can do. We also incorporated all of the commissioners to write this, recognizing that all of the commissioners were appointed based on personal expertise or life situations that give them insider views on what's going on actually in the state and in Employment First efforts. So what I'm going to show you is a brief overview of the report. It's like 120 some pages, so we're not going to go in detail. And I would recommend that you go to the the state labor and industry page to get the accessible version of it, and take a look at it yourself. And I would really maybe put your efforts into looking at sort of the summary of findings and the recommendations. You can, of course, read the data. We find it fascinating, but those two areas, we really try to summarize everything and make them also accessible. So putting them at a more accessible reading level for everyone to be able to read, understand, and hopefully advocate around. So I'm going to show this to you. Okay, so this is just the PDF version of this. I'm going to minimize. I have a little bottom screen thing that's making it block part of the bottom and might affect what you're able to see. Okay, hopefully you're able to see most of my screen now. So this is the front page, and I'm going to try not to make you guys sick. But we jump down to this table of contents, which is hyperlinked throughout. So you can click any one of these and get to that section. The introduction is really an overview. So there's some historical information, and then we get into some cross-agency findings, goals, and recommendations. Most of these recommendations that are in this first section are either cross-agency or larger state recommendations, but most of the cross-agency ones are also included in those specific sections of the report. I'll try to show you some. So then we jump down into the executive branch and OA, Office of Administration. And then you'll see that we try to title each one of the recommendations, so executive branch, EB, and number them just to try to make it a little bit easier if you were going to reference one of them. We did not do that as much with the data. Some sections did, some didn't. Then we jump into the General Assembly, which is more the legislative body. And you'll see this one's actually a sub-goal or objective, begin the process of phasing out 14Cs. So that's the sub-min wage certificates. Then we jump down into the recommendations for the General Assembly. Once again, same type of heading structures. And then we have the data part to back up some of that. Now this first section on the GA doesn't have a lot of data just because it's the legislative body. The Department of Human Services is by far the largest section. And so it's pretty expansive. So you'll see all the goals. And then we also marked whether they were new goals or not, which was a request of the departments so that they could see if they were looking at something that's been in there for a while or something that's brand new and needs to be considered separately. Then you'll see summary of findings. And one thing I want to point out here is it says worsening rate of progress. What that means is it wasn't that things got worse or numbers dropped, it's that the rate of progress slowed down. And you can jump to multiple conclusions on why, but that progress or change of rate is something you will see throughout this report in almost every single section. It's not that things got worse, it's just the progress slowed down. It could have something to do with returning from COVID or some of the funding that was available for recovery from COVID. There's a lot of things that you could deduct from that. Okay, and then I'm not going to go down through all of them one by one. And once again, I'm trying to not make you sick. Then I did try to split the data with ODP, and then we jumped down to OLTL, and then OMSAS because once again, there's so much. You will notice that there is less ODP data this time than usually. A lot of that was due to a high turnover of staff in ODP. We should get all of this data for our next year's report, but they were not able to produce it this year. There's OMSAS. And then we jump into education, same layout. We have a general abstract. Then we have any innovative initiative. And most of these were submitted by the departments to kind of share what they are trying or doing new that hopefully will work on improving employment first outcomes. Then we have our general goals and objectives, summary of findings, which again is kind of summary of the data, recommendations, the actual data. And then we move into labor and industry. I'm going to take you down through all of these. I'm not going to go through each, but this is labor and industry and OVR since OVR is housed in labor and industry. Obviously, really important section and probably second to the longest. And then we added a new category here, other agencies and departments. I'm really excited that we included this year because we have not necessarily talked about Department of Transportation, Department of Corrections, Veterans Affairs, Department of Aging. And as you all can imagine, these are really important entities as we look towards making sure that we really are doing employment first. So before I wrap up this video, I just want to share a couple things that we did find. I would say one of the biggest findings was we are making progress. As I mentioned, it slowed. Number two, I think that a lot of our different departments and agencies are not fully recognizing the role that employment first plays in all of their work. And so, for example, the Office of Administration had agreed to do some program that was supporting employment. However, what that ended up being was hiring one individual in sort of a supported employment role, and that person has since left the state work. And so we don't have anyone. So rather than looking at larger programs, hiring plans, recruitment, it was kind of narrowed down to like hiring a person. Similarly, with some of these other departments, yes, they might be initiating certain programs, but they're not looking like what are they necessarily doing throughout all of the work done through their department. So even hiring internally to meet hiring goals for people with disabilities. That's just an example. And so I think that as a state, as a chair of the EFOC, part of my role is to really help these different departments realize that they all have a role in employment first, and it's not just about serving people with disabilities, it's having them join the departments in leadership roles in employment, and overthrowing the system so that instead of creating separate programs for hiring people with disabilities, that ultimately, ideally, all programs are accessible to directly hire people with disabilities without making it a whole separate thing. Now, I think in the immediate, we will need to have some separate plans for hiring people with disabilities that look like the Schedule A hiring. But I mean, the big goal is equity. And so any person who has the qualifications to fill a job should be supported in doing that. And that would be my ultimate goal. Okay, so that's my goal, not necessarily speaking for everyone. But thanks for listening. Hope you have a good meeting. If you have any questions, Julia has my information, and I'd be happy to chat with you. Bye, everyone.